So, you were talking about your favorite podcast, and I think that we should keep
podcasts.
Podcasts. I think that we should keep talking about it because what we're doing is like an anti-plug. Like we're not plugging it; we're plugging it up. We're telling people not to subscribe to the Dispatch and other terrorist organizations because you listen to them. I don't listen to them. You listen to them.
I listen to them.
They don't have to.
I listen to them out of morbid curiosity as to what the so-called conservatives say that are not really conservatives, or the conservatives who are anti-Trump say.
Anyway, your friend David French.
I listen to those podcasts. First of all, I started listening to the advisory opinions because it is.
By the way, there's no worst title I can imagine to a podcast than advisory opinions. It sounds like a section in a Christian bookstore. It's the most boring sounding thing I've ever heard in my life.
But it's telling you exactly what it is. It's a legal podcast giving legal sort of advice. Anyway.
It's not supposed to be giving legal advice. I thought that was like illegal.
It's not legitimate. It's not legal advice. This is what I'm trying. This is what I was trying to.
But new plan. I'm committing a grievous act that's wildly illegal, and I will say I was acting upon legal advice, and then cite the advisory opinion podcast, and that's how we get it shut down.
Great. Okay. Joelle would come after us.
She's pro boner or something. I don't know.
Anyway, the reason I started listening... She's the reason I started listening. A lawyer friend of mine is the reason I started listening to advisory opinions.
It's the only wrong thing she's ever done.
She told me, "Oh, you'll like David French. He's a conservative," and I laughed in her face because I was like, "There's nothing conservative about him." Well, slightly, but not really. Anyway, my point is, I enjoy that podcast the most out of more out of the two that I listen to, that they put out. God, that's a lot of qualifiers.
It is a legal podcast. This isn't a legal podcast, by the way. This is the opposite of a legal podcast.
Are you going to let me get out my statements here? I listen to it because they don't give much opinion in that one. They literally just break down the law and what the law says, what the law means, what Supreme Court cases are doing, all of that interesting stuff that a legal mind would like to know. And they do it in a way that both someone who is a lawyer or a legal scholar would understand and appreciate. There's the word I was looking for. But also someone who is not a legal scholar like myself. They break it down in such a way that I'm like, okay, I basically followed that. And I learned things. And yeah, it's a good podcast to listen to if you are interested in any type of the actual legal merits and what laws say and all of this stuff.
So you're listening to it so our listeners do not have to listen to it.
And the nitty-gritty stuff, sort of, yes.
Good.
But if
we're not sending them an ounce of traffic.
Okay, well, the Dispatch, however, their other podcast...
The Discharge.
Is very opinionated and full of trash. And I listen to it just so I can refute it in my writing or in our discussions here. And that is staffed by people like Jonah Goldberg, Steve Hayes, which we've mentioned many times. And they're all just...
And soon to be, and I'm not dating this by saying this, the vaunted Allah pundit from Hot Air. Now, I just have to say something. How do I put this? I have been extremely online for longer than some of our listeners have been alive. And I'm dating myself. You want to talk about dating? I'm dating myself. I remember when Hot Air debuted in 2006, I believe, because I listened and read Michelle Malkin back in the day. And that was back into the I think like 03, 04. It was right after she had published her second book.
She's fallen off the face of the earth.
She still does some stuff, but she's very under the radar now. But, so she was originally putting out it was michellemalkin.com, and she was a columnist and putting stuff out the same way that Ann Coulter was, and Debbie Schlussel about the same time. So they were a great lineup. Conservatism in the mid-2000s was a very female-led movement. And
Yeah, and another one that I really enjoyed then, and I don't so much now.
who?
Well, I shouldn't say that. Mary Catherine Ham.
She's a different case.
Yeah, well, she would. I'm sorry.
Because-
just really quickly, she would go on Bill O'Reilly's show.
Yeah, she was the correspondent.
Yeah, and she would always spar with Juan Williams, and
Oh God.
and everyone hates Juan at Fox News. I mean, we love to hate him. That's what I mean to say.
Even the makeup artist hates Juan. Having to draw in his hairline.
He seems like a very nice man,
Yeah.
but he was just stupid. And so I loved every time watching her on a Monday.
Yeah.
They came on every Monday. Come on, Juan. she was my favorite.
I have two things. She is an extremely nice person. Extremely nice. She was my first Twitter follower. And she still follows me. Like 14, something like 13 years later. I don't know why. I mean, but she's very nice.
She mustn't actually look at the crap you post.
But my most mystifying follower, who I still have that follows me, is Karl Rove. The shit I've said about him, I called him Mr. Potato Head at least 8 times. I think I tagged him even. Nothing. Still follows me. I think maybe he likes my photos or something. Maybe he is, what they said about him. But anyway, back in the day, Alla Pundit was one of the first people that she brought onto this site, Hot Air. He had something called Allah's in the House, and I think I didn't know this, he started that in his early 20s. He's only in his mid-40s now, so he was not that old. And there's Charles Johnson, Little Green Footballs, and a lot of things that 99% of the people listening to this podcast right now have no idea who I'm talking about. But before you talk about David French and Stephen Hayes and Jonah Goldberg, and before you talk about any of these commentators that exist now, all of those people have a career because these people did what they did when they did. They created a space on the internet for conservatives to share content, write, create, make videos, actually use blogging as a platform, go beyond the weekly column of stuff that you would read in a magazine like a Weekly Standard or a National Review, and actually have relevant breaking news. Like, they created what we know now as conservative media. Back then, Fox was just, nightly opinion segments, and there was talk radio, and that was, Rush in the 90s, but there was no online presence that was robust for conservative content. And the most important part is they got ahead of any of the leftists who decided to use the internet for their own platform. And the leftists tried. They tried Huffington Post, which was originally not supposed to be that liberal. I mean, that Andrew Breitbart helped Arianna Huffington set that up. Yeah. It was not supposed to be a liberal deal. He also helped Matt Drudge immensely. And so the internet was the last bastion you had of free speech, where you really could say anything, you really could report on anything, and you were free from censorship. What a time. So a lot of these people go way back, but Alla Pundit in Hot Air was a real blogging innovator, and that was, he was one of the first breaking news people. He'd do live threads and blogs, and really, was well respected in that regard. In the years since, has maintained a pretty good voice and some sort of following. They've swapped out those seats at Hot Air a couple times, and I think, like you said, Mary Catherine Ham had one of them originally. Katie Pavlich got her start there. Lots of people who are well-known now got a start there. Well, he announced that he's no longer going to be continuing there, and basically made it very clear in 3 or 4 long, drawn-out, I'm stepping away, self-serving statements, that it was because they could only handle him being anti-Trump for so long, and he was just this principled person, and he's standing up, and Biden's speech that he gave about Trump was talking about democracy in these fascist times and all that other horse shit that you could get anywhere else. And so he limped out like kind of this traitor to the cause that he originally championed. And of course, people were, those 5 people in the blogging world were like, oh my God, how could you? Like, this is terrible. And so, of course, he got hoovered up by the little Dispatch Substack. So he is going to reveal his true identity, which has been an internet mystery since the mid-2000s. And and probably have a podcast there or be a podcast guest and have a weekly column on the Dispatch. So lucky you get to enjoy that. And
he'll probably join their podcast rotation.
So
They have several people.
he's trading what was used to be a top 5 blog, conservative or liberal on the internet, top 5 overall, millions of readers for tens of subscribers at the Dispatch. Talk about going out with a limp. So anyway,
Well, I think it's a little bit more than tens, but
have they? Do more than 99 people pay for the Dispatch?
yeah,
Are you sure?
yes, they have to. I mean, yeah. In order to pay these people, they have to, and
Do
they
they
do
pay
have,
them?
Yeah. These people, yeah, they have one of the podcast rotation in the podcast rotation. A guy who talks, I think, is probably around our age, maybe even a little bit younger. His name is Declan Garvey, and
Wow, that sounds like something out of a fucking private school, doesn't it?
he's one of their main editors, and that's his job. He gets paid by them. Yeah, and I'm assuming
Are
David
you
French
sure that
takes
it's-
some money from this.
But are you sure it's subscriber based, or did they just reach out to a couple wealthy donors and say, give us money so that we can create anti-Trump content? That is, I think, the real key there.
I don't know, but
Because if you ask me, I do not think that they have more than 100 people who pay per month. I know people
they have thousands. They have thousands upon thousands of people who follow their podcasts and subscribe to their podcasts.
But those you
But
can
those
listen
are
to
free,
without
yes,
a subscription.
yes.
Okay, so that's what I talk about, paid subscribers. I know people who have paid Substacks, and some of them are very good. I guarantee that they have more subscribers than the Dispatch does. I do not think... It's the same way where you look at, you looked at the donors for the Lincoln Project, those pedophiles, and you looked at the donor list, not the donors. Well, I don't know about the donors. I mean the people running it. When you actually looked at it functionally, like whatever they could disclose and everything, it was very rarely individual people giving actual money. It was the fact that there was a handful of people wrote some big checks so that they could pay consultants that also happen to know the people who wrote the big checks. Everybody helps everybody, and this thing gets off, and it gets to create the impression, this is what bothers me, giving the impression that it is actually small people, small donors running the deal. Say what you want about Bernie, he knows how to get in small donors. Say what you will about Trump, he knows how to get in small donors. These are not your average Joe writing a $25 check being I really support your resistance content that you post on your their website. No. It's a couple people in Virginia Beach who get way too much money to do nothing, and a couple defense contractors who give them money. Big deal.
That kind of probably makes sense, because I think if you want to subscribe to the Dispatch, it's $10 a month or something.
Right. That's a big ask for that group, because you actually have to subscribe and think that their content that is behind a paywall is worth listening to. Now,
the only thing behind a paywall, I think,
Jonah Goldberg naked
is their articles. So the 3 podcasts that are part of their family you're available free on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, all that shit.
So listen. Okay, sorry. I should step off mic and then start talking as I get more coffee. So listen to our podcast for free. Subscribe for our written pieces.
Right, which they talk about during the podcast with the dumbest shit in the world.
But they do that so that you should, because I'm missing out on this. I understand why that sort of false scarcity mentality is important.
But no, my point is they give the content of what they've written on the podcast. So several times David French has said, well, as I've written many times, blah, 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 blah. And
then that's just fucking stupid.
He'll give the argument, and I'm just well, now I don't have to pay to read
these
shit.
people don't know how to run a business. They don't.
But anyway, my point is all of that listen content, except they have one weekly, so they put out 2 advisory opinions and 2 dispatch per week. Mm-hmm. They have one special live dispatch podcast that if you're a subscriber you get to listen to during the week. So it's one Thursday night when they are when Jonah Goldberg has had one too many martinis and and
he goes on an anti-Islamic rant.
Right, and says things that they don't want posted in public, so you have to pay for it.
Well, that's good. That's good. Get a group of 10 people to listen to your shit where you really go off the rails, and they're not technologically savvy enough to record it.
Well, that's why I think maybe I should, just pay for 1 month and see what's behind that paywall and see, is this worth listening to?
No, you're going to find someone who who's stupid enough and already paying for it and use their login. Do we know anybody like that?
Probably not.
I guarantee no one that we know. And by extension, no one that we know who knows anyone that we know. So I'm talking about multiple degrees of separation actually pays for that garbage. I don't believe it.
This is why I'm saying I should probably just subscribe for 1 month see what they do in the
No,
live
I will do the
podcast.
opposite of a tax write-off for that. I will report you to the IRS, and then you have to pay extra. This is this gets into a larger topic that I didn't know that I wasn't really prepared to talk about, but whatever. I'm never prepared to talk about anything on here. Thinking about just sort of conservative media in general and what we want to do with what we're doing. Now, right now, if we had our podcast here, Carpe Forum, is hosting Thought Criminal right now, and it was hosting one other podcast. So let's say 2 podcasts. So let's say someone else, one of our, our book club meetings, something that Colin is doing, let's say that would be a second thing. If we had those, and then we're posting 1 article a day or something along those lines, or if we just had the 2 podcasts and all of our written content was behind a paywall, I still wouldn't feel like we're doing enough that's worth people actually paying for yet. Does that make sense?
Well, yeah, because we can't get these assholes to write anything.
No, I know that. But, let's say that at least we had 1 thing come out per day that was written, and we do a couple podcasts a week, and there's 2 separate podcasts. Just like the Dispatch's outcome and everything there. Do you really feel like that's something that's worth paying for? Because the people I know who do a Substack, it's 2 reports a week, 4 other written pieces of content, over the course of every couple of weeks, real, deep analysis, something that a political campaign or an advisor or something like that would pay a lot of money for, to get that kind of I'm going to go through these polls, I'm going to go through this news, I'm going to break it down for you. I still need to subscribe to Coulter's as well, and hers is she does a podcast recording almost every single day, and you pay for that. And her written content and everything. And the only thing free is the columns that she puts out once per week. And sometimes she'll release things to non-subscribers. But there's a lot of stuff that they put out to make it feel like people are getting their money's worth. And that's something that concerns me about both some of these conservative streaming subscribers, subscriptions, and something like this Dispatch thing or something like that. And even if we were to do it, we don't do enough to make it worth people paying for something like this. It's hard to monetize something that people have already mostly been getting for free. Most conservative content you can get for free. The only thing you would pay for is their physical book or their audiobook. That's fine. That's usually something that's not but you ask for $20 every 2 years.
But doesn't that get at the exact tenets of conservatism? We don't want to pay for stuff that we don't think is worth it. That's the conservative mind, right?
But then you have the reason. I get why people give money. I get why people subscribe to something like the Substack or the Discharge. Is I want to support what you do. So it's the $5 in the tip jar or something like that. But I think that then the social contract then implies you should be doing something that is worth that extra amount. I don't see it from what they put out. I see it from what other people put out, because they work their asses off for it. And I know that if we got to the stage where people are paying for what we do, I would make sure that what we do is worth, either we're literally paying so that these people will write for us or contribute to us, or we're putting out enough to where it's you can throw a $5-10 here and there to support the hard work that we put in here. I just don't see it from a lot of these people. But I don't know. I feel like people do this in a lot of different dimensions, a lot of different programs, and a lot of things where people make you sign up for $20 a month for what they do, and it's that's not fucking worth it. You're not doing anything here. What?
It's our version of OnlyFans.
Yeah. I just love that when OnlyFans first came out, there was a couple people who treated it for the garbage it is, and said, I'm just going to take a picture in my underwear reading a book, and you're going to pay for it. That's great. At least you're having fun with it. I do like weird things or something. Like I would have like a video of me like streaking through a Walmart or something like that. But that's subscribers only. And then on Twitter, just post like I just got arrested for streaking through a Walmart, or pulling like a Norman Freeman prank where he did the cheerleader costume, and he was like,
Well,
at least have fun with it. Who knows? Someone's into that.
I mean, I could see people using OnlyFans. I mean, other people use OnlyFans for things that are not pornography. It's just very rare.
It's winnowing. Well, Joey Diaz was talking about on his podcast. He was one of like 10 comedians that they approached saying, hey, if you want to record your comedy specials with all the fucks and everything included, we'll support you because we're trying to get other kinds of content on here, because that was when they were ready to crack down on OnlyFans. And they were like, okay, we have to like say that like it's other artists and other, someone's painting a painting or someone's telling a joke or something. It's not just, it's not just tits and hole.
Well,
that might be the rebranding. I mean, if the Dispatch wants a few more subscribers, that might be their thing. It's not just tits and hole.
no, I could see someone like Norman Freeman making an OnlyFans where, his funny content is behind a paywall. I mean, we would pay for it.
I would pay for it because that's a hardworking person who literally risks arrest every time he gets on camera to do some stupid
And
thing.
he's also quite funny.
I mean, that's a bail fund at that point.
Funny and
Can we get Norman
culturally
Freeman
insensitive
on the podcast? I mean, that's not someone you really have to have an audio. It has to be a video person. If this thing ever translates to video, we will have to. No, I think we should.
It won't.
We should.
Just us in like a nightie.
Us in matching burqas.
Oh my god.
That would be great. The Modesty Podcast.
Us in matching burkas sipping cocktails. Yeah, just and eating bacon.
But the burqa just has a little slit in the front with a little extra, like, That was where Michelle Malkin and Hot Air, their first videos, they dressed up as a rock band in burqas, and they went out and just started fucking singing, and the full niqab, the full face mask, like the ones that you have in Afghanistan, and it was so fucking funny. Like, this was pre-YouTube. They would just record this and then have to hand upload it onto, you have to like have a video host that you subscribe to and pay for. They'd upload to the video host who could then, you'd have to hand code the embedding into the site, because I don't even think the WordPress had a video embed by that point. And the internet was still too slow. And they would just make funny shit like that. It was great. You could get away with anything. I feel like we talk about the early era of blogging in the way that people talk about New York in the late 70s. Like, this is our Studio 54 era. And now we're that woman in Sex and the City who's sitting there smoking by the window who falls out of it.
No one has any fun anymore.
If there's ever a top 10 character, and I've never even watched Sex and the City, but I've seen that clip so many fucking times, that's a top 10 gay icon. Speaking of which, Liza is walking again.
Oh god.
She's vertical. She's still with us. I mean, Lady Gaga showed up at the Oscars with a crowbar, hit Liza in the knees, got her in that wheelchair, wheeled her out on stage like an invalid, and then was like, please, like, say nice things. Like, because Tony doesn't know where he is. Like, Tony's too far gone to be of any use. Like, he's a vegetable at this point, just sitting there telling Sinatra stories in a suit with no shoulders. Like, she has sucked the life out of Tony Bennett. And now she tried to do it to Liza, and Liza fought back. And you know how she fought back? The way that you used to back in the day. She got one of her gays to do it. So one of the gay mafia members, who I think is a hairdresser.
Just wild conspiracy theories just being...
This isn't a conspiracy. It was in the Daily Mail.
Oh.
One of Liza's gays came out, who was there at the show, who was her escort that night, / home health giver. Showed up and said Lady Gaga forced her to come on stage. She didn't want to. And the event organizers or whatever was after the Will Smith slap. She was like, okay, I can walk out to stage. Like, we're too pressed for time. Get in a wheelchair. So they shoved her in a wheelchair and wheeled her out on stage, showing people, making everyone worried that she was like on death's door, just so they could get that segment. It was supposed to be the two of them holding hands on stage and singing together. Instead, they shoved her in a wheelchair, dragged her on stage, and made her look like shit. And so Liza used one of her gays to get in the Daily Mail to get back at Lady Gaga for trying to go out there and do some cheek-to-cheek 3 or something like that moment with her.
That'll be me and you sometime.
That's us now.
I'll shove your ass in a wheelchair and wheel you out and be like, look,
he's fine as I'm voiding into a bag. That's now. That's us at a late night happy hour. Well, one of our friends was talking. He's like, I'm so happy. Like when the pictures came out of her leaving Craig's in West Hollywood, walking. You know, Craig's is one of the last C&B scene kind of restaurants in Los Angeles. It's in West Hollywood. It's very nice. The steaks are nice and martini. It's the Quiet Woman. It's the West Hollywood's version of Quiet Woman. And very small, intimate leather booths. Very hard to get a table, like impossible. But you go there on any given night, and there's a name or two that are there. The drinks, the martinis come in like soup bowls. Like they're huge and they're good and they're not expensive. So she was spotted leaving Craig's, but she was just holding someone's hand and walking out, and she looked great. And so we were very happy. And I was like, I told our friends, like, I've had the martinis that they serve at Craig's. I guarantee I wasn't walking out that night. So for her to be out there vertical, she's a fighter. Despite Lady Hog's best attempts to take her down. Lady Gaga is the Jonah Goldberg of pop music.
Oh, we've come full circle.
Yes, I always bring him back. Someone who started out with so much promise, could have been a new generation, and sold out so bad, and now pisses on anybody who helped them get to where they were at. And just sucks the life out of everything. Yes. And now you just imagine Jonah Goldberg in tights.
No.
I hope no one's listening to this with breakfast.
Or dinner. Or lunch, for that matter.
If you play this and like, I'm just imagining like you playing this at different times of day. Like there's people who listen to this sober. That's terrifying.
We record it sober sometimes.
Yeah. Speaking of retail, your shoe returning experience.
Which we still haven't fixed yet.
It might be fixed by the time this episode's out. So do you want to tell the story of what happened with the shoes? Or shall I? He bought a set of pumps, very tasteful.
I needed new gym shoes, tennis shoes, however you want to call them. Insert colloquialism here. Sneakers, whatever. I bought new shoes. I needed new shoes, and so we went to Marshall's.
You were walking around in these, Oliver Twist Nikes.
I was walking around in Nikes that were falling apart because, I paid a lot of money for them, so I was going to wear them till they fucking fell apart.
You really did.
And so I needed new shoes. I went to Marshall's, found a reasonably priced pair of Adidas.
Well, you were going to go to Fashion Island and go spend like lots of money on a pair of nice
because
shoes.
I have bad feet, and I know that I need to do that.
Well, but you don't have to. So you went to Fashion Island. You were going to get these really expensive, sneakers, and I was like, just we'll check out Marshall's. Like they always have, they always have one pair of tennis shoes that are wearable. So I thought.
Right. So I bought these Adidas.
You went and tried them on.
Yes, I
walked
tried them
around
on.
the store.
I walked around the store for a few minutes.
Yeah.
They felt fine. My feet, which are bad for various reasons, I blame my mother. You
can't use it as a catch-all.
Well, she has bad feet, so genetically, I have bad feet. Anyway, they were not hurting my feet, and my feet felt a little bit better, so I was like, okay, these seem all right after about, 5 minutes of walking around them.
Yeah. Like you would try in shoes in a store normally. Like, okay, these are great, I will take them.
Yeah, you're not going to walk around the store for, 2 hours.
Yeah, you're not going to be hiking.
So they felt fine. I was, okay, I'll take them. I took them, brought them home, put in my insoles, went to the gym in them. After, one day of exercising in them, I was like, I can't do this. These are actually terrible for my feet. It's like it's like somehow Marshalls did it on purpose. It's like, we're going to make them perfect here in the store, but as soon as you get them home, they're shit.
It was something, yeah, it's like they geo-fenced the store to be comfortable. And then the second that you walk into the parking lot, you're like, oh, these aren't that great.
So, yeah, I wore them. They were gently worn, like very gently.
Like the tread is still perfect on them.
Yes.
Like there's nothing. You know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna get a paper towel and put some rubbing alcohol and just, if there is a bit of dust on it, just wipe it off the bottom.
Anyway, I tried to return them, and this.
Now, obviously, you'd thrown away the box and the receipt and the tag because, okay, great, they fit. We don't want garbage hanging around the house. Toss it.
Well, we leave you around the house.
Well, we want limited garbage around the house. So you tossed it like any reasonable person would.
Yes. And after the one use, I was like, oh, these aren't so good. So we tried to bring them back. And this woman...
So we walked into the same Marshalls.
Yes.
We found on your screenshot, on your bank statement, I spent this amount, this amount plus tax, at this address.
Yes.
The address of this Marshalls. We walked in, we found the same pair in a different size, so you have the tag. We got in the line to go return. I had some other things, some mule mugs I bought there that turned out to be shitty, that I didn't even use them, and I returned them. No, with no issue. She was super nice to me. Now, this woman gave me the business last time I went to go return some towels that I brought that had holes in them. There was holes in them towels. And I returned them, and she looked at me like I was an axe murderer, returning something. First of all, because I'm the only non-Persian or Arab woman who was at the Marshalls, so she was immediately suspicious. Second of all...
Or Asian.
Or Asian, that's true. West or East Asian. Second of all, these towels, I couldn't even bring them inside. I was like, I'm not going to even wash them or use them for guest towels because they look ratty. So I took them and, returned them. She gave me a lot of shit, but whatever. Of course, we go back. She's working, and she is the lane that you get for the returns. Now, she treated me like I was her grandson. She was so sweet. Oh, honey. Oh, no. Yes, we return. You have receipt, everything. She looked at you like you were a serial molester. She gave you
behind her mask
and glasses and her readers. She gave you the dirtiest fucking look, and you put the shoes on the counter with the ones with the tag, and you explained the situation, and it was a no from the start.
She said, "Oh no, you have no tag, you have no receipt, and these have been worn a lot, or something like that. I don't know." She said, "We can't take these back."
Yeah,
and then the manager was called.
Well, because you did a couple.
The police were called. The SWAT team were the last to arrive.
Jonah Goldberg was called. And he sniped us first. No, it was funny because there's always a couple rounds where you're trying to explain to them, okay, I'm reading the policy is written in like size 48 font behind them. And I read it, and per what I understood, if you don't have the tags in the receipt, they have to issue you store credit if it was purchased within the last 30 days. Well, it was.
Mm-hmm.
You didn't have that, but you had the tags for the same exact pair of shoes and proof of purchase. Like a credit card statement works anywhere because you can say, I was here, let's say it's $39.99, with tax it's $47.67. The shoes I have here, the ones that have the tag, are $39.99, with tax it's $47.67. Look, I'm not trying to scam you. Like, I really just want my money back on these shoes. And they treated you like you were a fucking criminal. And so then it was like, well, is the manager available? Can we just get some clarification here? Not in a Karen way. Like, we were nice. No one raised their voice. We were nice.
Yeah.
Okay. So the manager comes over, and I like to call her, there's a certain type of woman that operates in management at either retail, banking, any kind of customer service position, and I call them the squaw. The squaw is usually a certain body type, but specifically, if it's not that, it's a certain personality type of nobody gets past me, nobody gets one on me, I will make up a reason to make your life difficult. And say what you will about the Karens that go out and search for difficult managers and try to be, can I, with the Kate Gosselin haircut, can I see the manager? Something had to get them to that point. And it's the squaw that got them there. Because the squaw will not help you ever. She will not go out of her way. She will not even work within the limits of the policy. This is not a particularly intelligent person or someone capable of critical thinking. Their job is to tell you no. And they are the enforcer for a company that does nothing for them. They just realize that with a certain amount of power, they can make your lives hell. So the squaw comes in.
Well, and she must have been like 25, 26. Like,
right.
She was...
Yes.
And, yeah. She was a...
Not helpful, not polite, and started making shit up. So she said...
she made something completely up.
She made something up of, we said, well, here's the thing. If these are shoes, or if it was anything, a pair of jeans, or any other piece of clothing that you buy in the store, even if you, let's say you took a pair of jeans home, you washed them, and you wore them out, and you're like, wait a second, these are terrible, or these shrunk, or something like this, like, I followed the instructions, and they fit terribly, or I put them on, and they're really uncomfortable, like, I want to return these. At any other store, you have the right to do that. It's not lingerie. It's not something that's an intimate. At any other store, and I've returned, I mean, for God's sake, for years I've returned things to Marshalls that don't fit or anything like that, and they're always really generous about it. But this one had a squaw. And she said, well, that's why we were very polite, and she was nasty. I sound like the, and I told her, exactly, and I said, ma'am, I sound like her, but it's true. She said, well, we tell people to try them on at home on a carpeted surface so there's no damage on the shoes in case you have to return them. But you don't have the tag anyway, so it doesn't matter. And I said, no one told us that when we purchased the shoes.
And no one would tell you that.
No one would.
Well, when you said no one told us that, she said, oh, well, she should have when you purchased them. And I'm like...
No one would.
With 30 people in the line behind me who were so anxious to get the hell out of here.
Right.
And... 2 cashiers working. This poor woman who checked me out was like just trying to whip us through. She didn't even like.
She didn't even offer you an email receipt.
I didn't think she gave me a receipt.
Yes.
She was just like, "Okay, you're done. Oh, bye." Like next,
right?
Like she's going to sit there and tell me, "Oh, please don't wear these shoes."
Right.
She's
out inventing a shoe policy there that does not exist, and there's no wear on them. There's a little speck of dust on the side because you wore it on asphalt, newly laid asphalt in the parking lot. That's it. So it's not like you went going up Kilimanjaro and then you came back and like, I don't want these shoes. So I don't know if there's something where it's like if you accept a certain number of returns without a receipt, Marshalls docks your pay or something, or goes and like kills your child if you work there. I don't know what it is, but she was just there was no getting past the squaw. So I get why people get upset with customer service. And especially, and ask for management. Management is not supposed to be that person. Management is supposed to sit there and resolve disputes, usually to the customer's benefit. They are there in case there's a shitty cashier or someone who doesn't want to do their job or someone who's creating, and to explain and reiterate and anything like that. And usually they'll be like, look, we're sorry, that's the policy. I understand the situation. Here, give me the shoes. We'll give you a store credit or something. If they would have done that, it would have been fine. Now we have to go to another Marshalls and see if they have a squaw or not to see if we can get money back for
if they'll cave a little bit.
Something. Because this is...
Because I would be fine with the store credit to get some other things that we need for the house. So.
Now, exactly. Like, it's $40. $40 is $40. Now, it's funny because you look up this Marshalls on Yelp, which that's not always the best indicator, because if you have a positive Marshalls experience, you're probably not going to leave a Yelp review. If you have a negative Marshalls experience, you're going to... It's not like a restaurant, you know? And there's 2.5 stars for this particular Marshalls, and they all describe how mean the management is, how mean the cashiers are, how cluttered the store is. Like, it gets shitty reviews. It's in an area of Irvine with $1 million homes, by the way. It's not like this is like, oh, this is an underprivileged area or something. You know,
right next to the worst Sprouts in the world, too.
Well, there's some that I think that Alton Parkway in Irvine is built on an Indian burial ground. Speaking of squaws. But, yeah, there is a very specific... So, when you go out, you're in the world, you're trying to do something at the bank, you're trying to go to a store and get something, return something. Keep an eye out for these people. They're linebackers for a football team that doesn't exist. You know, they're built more like linemen. Like, these people will make your lives very difficult. And it's something that, by the way, I would say 15, 20 years ago didn't exist. Like, customer service was still pleasant in the late 90s, early 2000s. You'd get the odd situation, but it was majority pleasant. I would say that it's majority unpleasant now. In some parts of the country, especially California.
Well, you know why?
Why?
Because of the generation. Who are the managers now? Millennials.
That's true.
We are millennials, yes, but only begrudgingly. I do not identify with any other like aspect of millennial culture. Well, certain ones, yes. But the fact that most of them are entitled, the fact that most of them are socialist, if not communist, the fact that most of them are, do not believe in any type of monogamy or anything like, well, I shouldn't say most. A large swath of millennials are like that. Trying this, what is it, ethical non-monogamy or whatever they call it. The reason that you have these horrible managers is because now those jobs are held by...
but when did they become the apple polishers and the rule
millennials.
enforcers? It went from do your own thing to fuck you. You're not getting your return back.
Because they
Fuck
hate
you.
capitalism. So they're trying to...
But if they did, wouldn't they work against the interests of the corporation? Wouldn't they give you your $40? It's the same thing with the mask thing. These anti-corporate people became the most corporate people in the world. They support more corporations. They buy more iPhones. They do more things than anyone else, even though they're quote anti-corporate.
Well, see, but I'm of the opinion that no, you make a good point about shouldn't they want to help you? Well, no.
Like what happened?
They hate their jobs so much, and they're so miserable working in this corporate environment.
They hate you for going to that corporation.
They hate their job. They hate this environment that they're in. They feel like they're stuck there. And so they have an overall negative outlook on their lives, and they're going to make you miserable too, especially because you're supporting this store that they hate so much.
See, and I know it's a regional thing too, because I feel like if you went to a nicer part of the country, like the Midwest, this still isn't there yet. Like you could probably have a decent customer service experience. Like in Idaho, people were lovely. Even in New York, where people are... New York gets the worst rap. No one in New York is mean and actually means it. If they're mean, it's because they're efficient. And a lot of people aren't used to that. But I remember at restaurants, boutiques, coffee shops, everything, people went above and beyond to A, be efficient, and B, get you what you needed to keep it moving. Here, they are the worst combination. They're slow, and they don't give you what you want just to spite you. It's like that quadrant of the country, pretends to be nice is actually mean, like the South. Here is pretends to be mean is actually mean. The Northeast is pretends to be mean and actually nice, and the Pacific Northwest is pretends to be nice and is actually nice, although I think they should cut Washington out of that, or at least the Seattle area, because the meanest people are from Seattle. I just don't understand.
Look at the weather they live in.
But here's an interesting generational thing. I know you're giving me some dirty look because you're gonna be like, we're going past 14 measures. This is gonna be so hard to edit. Well, anyway, we're here. Chop it up into 2 episodes if you fucking want. We talk about in the 90s, those people in management were either Gen X, and so it's like, okay, fuck the man or something like that. Here, get your return. Or they were boomers and they were genuinely nice people who wanted to help you. Like, whatever. Here, sure, honey, I'll help you. Think about education, though. Because in our era, teachers were older, usually, on average, middle-aged to older women, sometimes men, but usually middle-aged to older women who were nice, generous. Here, learn your times tables, learn where Russia is on a map. For you, the Soviet Union. And
I rolled my eyes. You couldn't hear it, but
I think they can hear it by this point. It sounds like pinwheels at on a slot machine. And so they were usually you think older, nicer people who were very mothering, caring, who became teachers. Like I pictured 3 teachers in my childhood who looked just like that. Now it's squaws. mean millennials. Your kid's gonna learn this, and I don't care, and everything. Okay, fine, I'll report you as a parent for child abuse if you don't let me, teach your kid that it's okay to be trans or whatever stupid shit that they do now. What? And I think about this, and it's like, what a decline in civilization and in our culture in general to have people like this who are in charge of your access to healthcare, your access to education, your access to financial independence. There's a lot of mean ass. It's like getting through a fucking offensive line. There's a lot of mean fucking people you have to get through.
I feel like I've said this before on another episode, so if I have, I apologize, but
Colin, we apologize.
This is like the one thing about me that is sort of anti-conservative, not so conservative. It's an ideal that I have. It's an outlook that I have that's doesn't fit the conservative mold, probably. Teachers need to be paid more.
Okay.
If we need to spend more money in the education system just earmarked for teacher salary. Because why do you think we get such horrible teachers? Because it's a thankless, payless job, basically. They make nothing. They get no respect or gratitude. It is like bottom of the barrel type work in society as a whole. Like, a lot of people shit on the profession of educator.
But my thinking is...
And part of that comes with not being paid that much. And so people leaving, the really smart, educated people leaving, academia, college with a degree, even if it's just a bachelor's degree, they're leaving with a bachelor's degree. They're looking for other jobs when they really could probably be great teachers, but they don't want to do that because it pays nothing. So who becomes teachers? The people who can't find a job anywhere else, who probably aren't good teachers and are stupid.
Well, I would hazard that the average manager of a Starbucks makes more and is a nicer person than the average elementary school teacher.
Yeah. That's a problem.
When that used to be the punchline, what are you going to do, manage a Starbucks? Like, make 16, make not even that, make $8 an hour or something like that. The average manager of a Starbucks is able to get a full education through ASU, free, paid for by Starbucks, is able to go on sabbatical. Like, it's more, that's what like a college professor level of like benefits that they get, health and everything, their family's health, all covered. They get access to like credit unions and things like that are cheaper rates and everything else. That's what it used to be a teacher. I think that no one can really disagree with the idea of teachers getting paid more. I know some teachers when I was young said, well, we still get a few months off and we get all major holidays. Not a lot of people get that. And we don't have to work outside, like that kind of stuff. But here's the problem. Like you said, we need to spend more money on education to do that. The money is there. The problem is it's being spent, and if you look at the growth of the administrative state and the bureaucratic state when it comes to education, it's like something like 1,000% over the past 30 years. So there are more administrators at any given school than there are teachers. Now. Not when you and I went to school. Now. So there is every district has a DEI person now, diversity, equity, inclusion. Every district has an environmental outreach person now that does God knows what. I don't know, they collect soil samples out the fucking elementary school. Some stupid shit. Every district has, or every now on the school level, there is a diversity coordinator who works with the DEI person. There is a this, there is a this, there's a this, there's a security person, there's a this person, there's a this person. There are more administrators in schools than there are in prisons now. And vice principals and vice everything like this. I watched the decline of the American education system live happen over the course of my elementary school, period of time.
I've watched it live happen over the course of my career. Why do you think I'm not doing it anymore?
Right. But it started with, I remember first, second grade, some of the nicest, most wonderful teachers. It's the neighborhood school that was in walking distance. All the parents knew the teachers. All the teachers knew the parents. All the parents knew each other. All the teachers knew each other. Everyone is in this together. I want my child to get an education. We work. We want to make sure that they're taken care of. The parents were invested in their children's education. It was all income levels. from literally like living by the river in a trailer to $1 million homes over on the golf course. Everybody was together, diverse races, kids from out of the country, kids from down the street, everything. It was paradise. Then the administrative state creeped in because they were like, well, we need standards. So we need standardized tests. And that was right around No Child Left Behind and all that Bush era bullshit. So, sure enough, starting in 2nd grade and 3rd grade, okay, you guys have to start taking these standardized tests. Well, we really don't know how these work. It's supposed to be a judge based on how good our teachers actually are. Okay, so now we start learning tests. And all of a sudden, the school starts hiring more people in the office. Not the lady to answer the phones. Not, all of a sudden it was a vice this, vice that. Oh, this is the vice coordinator for teacher outreach. Like, that's a real term for absolute bullshit. And then the principal, who is a nice older person, gets replaced by some old Gen X young boomer who's going to change the world in her St. John's power suits. And all of a sudden, her personal platform has to be the success of that school, and she is going to mow down any 30-year teacher that she can to get to that point. So, one generation of teachers who were a year or two for a time are like, fuck it, I'm not working with this bitch. Done. Because the teachers are spending half their times in meetings learning how to do diversity outreach and not actually teaching the kids. So 4th, 5th, 6th grade, the last of the old school, pick up the hat off your head, turn it back around, that's the way it's meant to be worn, son. Like, those type of people either quit, retired, or are forcefully pushed out because they don't want to enforce the testing standards. And so now they've been replaced by younger apple polisher teachers who are like, I'm going to do the right thing, and they all become squaws. They all become enforcers. They stop talking to parents. They don't do parent-teacher nights. And they just make it the worst experience for education for the children possible. So the kids who are now a couple years younger than I am, I know got a worse education than I did because they didn't get those good teachers for their last couple of years. They didn't get to go on the trips, on the whale watching trips or any of the cool field trips we did because it was too much time studying for the tests.
Right. No, standardized tests ruined a lot of things, coupled with obviously other shit.
And now there are transgender bathrooms in that district. I'm almost positive. There are, because there was a fight over it, I'm sure it won. There are critical race theory being taught at the elementary school level. New math, which was something starting in the 80s. Those kids are getting a shit education, even though they're in one of the greatest public school districts in the country, because the administrative state that grew. The district grew by 50%. Not students, not teachers, administrators, since I was in elementary school. And it's gotten a worse educational experience for the kids. And by the way, when you get to teacher pay, the 3rd grade teacher who I had has now moved on to administration. She's a principal at some school, which is the normal sort of accession there of jobs. Whoever is in her job is making the exact same amount that she did in 1996 as she does now, or they do now. And there are 10 more administrators that look over this one person, all getting their salaries paid by money that should have been earmarked towards that teacher. That teacher should be earning about $75,000 a year now. I think, for being an elementary school teacher, they're probably earning $35, $40, because their salary all got chopped up and sent to administration. And they're still giving them maps with the Soviet Union on them in the classroom. And that brings that full circle.
I saw... Obviously, I went to private schools my entire elementary, middle school, high school education. So I didn't have as much of these standardized tests that you're talking about.
Thank God.
But I saw the effects in, through my mother, who taught for the last 7 years of her career in public high school. So I got to see that. But I also got to see the effects of the college students when I started teaching college level. When you raise a group of students, telling them, I'm teaching you the test that you're going to have to pass at the end, that becomes the mindset of, let me learn everything I can to pass this one test, and then I'll forget it all and I won't have to do it again.
Yes.
That becomes the mindset.
Those people are your doctors now, by the way. Your doctors just crammed in a bunch of information. They can't diagnose shit.
And so they get to college, and I get asked all the time, well, will this be on the test? Well, I get that all the time, and I eventually had to just say, if I say it in class, it's fair game for the test.
That scares the shit out of kids.
And they're like, but they don't know how to react because that's not how they were taught.
Right.
That's not how they went through education. They went through
critical
education.
Thinking switch was off.
They went through education
was vacuuming up information.
They went through education being literally given a list and said, you need to know all of these things. This is how they will be asked in this order, like on the test. And so when they get to a class where they actually have to digest what's being said, take notes and all, they're so confused and so puzzled that they can't function and they can't actually pass a class. So what do we do in return? Colleges lower the standards. Colleges ask basically professors or instructors to make it easier or to pass students who don't deserve to be passed. And then they get degrees that they don't deserve, and are not equipped to have, or not educated enough to have. And as you said, that leads to doctors and CPAs and stuff like this who know nothing of what they need to know to do the jobs that they've been tasked to do.
Because the most important thing, whether you're a doctor or you're a CPA or you're an EMT or you're any kind of professional role, is yes, you have to or an attorney, you have to know the case law, you have to know the science, you have to know the tax doctrine, but you have to apply critical thinking in each of those areas. You want a CPA who comes to the table with 35 years of experience saying, you know what, I've seen this before, and this is how you have to react to it. You want a doctor saying, I've done these studies before, I've seen patients and everything like this. In 10 years, you're going to want to keep an eye on that thing in your heart because that's something that might be an issue down the road. And you want an attorney saying, this is the case law, this is the this, this is the that, but I know how the legal system works here, and this is something that you have to do. As your attorney, I give you advice. You're paying for their advice, whether it's a doctor or a CPA or an attorney. You're not paying for somebody who was able to pass a test because they memorized the night before. That is terrifying, because you go in with something that is not immediately something that they learned on a test. They're not going to fucking know. They're not going to be of any help. You can be, by the way, and this is something that's going to blow everyone out of the fucking water, you could be more effective than your doctor, your attorney, or your CPA with just what you learn on the internet in some cases. You can study more about something that's more specific because all those 30, 40-year veterans of the medical field, the accounting field, and the legal field are all retired now or gone. So you can call up one of them who's in their 80s or 90s now because they're smarter than any of these younger people coming in as far as they've seen more experience and have more critical thinking skills. Or you can probably figure it out mostly yourself. And then if you have to go to a professional, you go to a professional just for a certification or just sort of that kind of deal. That's not good. These people are rewarded societally and paid accordingly because they are very good at what they do and because you're paying for that critical thinking.
And a lot of this stems from, as I've said forever, and many people roll their eyes, but we've now had the conversation, a lot of it stems from a failing education system. Yeah. And people look at education and be like, well, it is what it is, and blah. No, that has real life, huge consequences on the future of a healthy society, and you are letting it go to shit.
Quite literally. If you let your education system go to shit, that's your future doctor making a medical error in your next operation. That's your future accountant making an error on your taxes leading to an audit. And that's your future... oh, bless you. And that's your future attorney giving you poor advice and getting you in legal trouble. You are digging, literally your own grave by not having a decent education system. And I don't think that's a partisan issue.
No.
The left always wants to do that when they want to force an opinion down your throat. It shouldn't be a partisan issue that we support democracy. Whatever horseshit that they say to put their boot on someone's neck. But this is something that shouldn't be a partisan issue in the sense of it's in everyone's interest that we have a good education system. No, maybe not. Maybe it's not in everyone's interest that we have a good education system. Maybe in the idea of in the mind of the bureaucratic state, it's okay to have a shitty education system because it means the bureaucracy gets to grow, more people who are not qualified can get jobs, and
more people
everything lurches forward.
More people, they will be the ones who are smart, and more people will look to them as for the answers.
Right. People who would have been middling or would not have been good teachers, you know.
California has recently passed through the state, both House and Senate, a bill saying that it would strip a doctor of his or her license for practicing using COVID misinformation. So meaning you're no longer able to practice medicine, and we will take away your license and
what counts as misinformation?
I don't know. My point is, you will lose your license. You will lose your basically your mode of living, your income, if you, I don't know, if you tell someone to take ivermectin or whatever. If you don't toe the government line of what is truth, they will take away your license. This has not been signed by Newsom yet. It is still probably sitting on his desk waiting for a signature. What do we think? Do we think he's actually going to sign it? Because if he has aspirations for higher, presidency, whatever, I think this makes him look really bad. But this bill has not gotten a lot of press. It's not widely known about. So if he signs it in the cloak of darkness, is it ever really going to come to light?
I'm just imagining him wearing a black cloak and trying to sign something in a dark room.
So I'm going back and forth in my mind of, is he going to sign this? Is he not?
Well, he vetoed the shoot 'em up anywhere sites for the drug, the libertarians and dumb liberals, which it's almost a Venn diagram of a circle now, of, just make drugs legal. Just put up safe injection sites. Put them up everywhere. Put them up in your neighborhood so people can just shoot up whenever the fuck they want. Obviously, it's going to lead to a lot of overdoses and deaths. It's not a particularly safe idea. And the people who say that they do it in Europe to success, there's like one every 500 miles. It's not like it's every fucking block like people think that it is. And so that's obviously going to get, he turned that down because people are going to die as a result of that policy, and it's going to be a very easy thing to use against him if and when he decides to run for president. Now this, getting doctors fired, is something that could probably be a liability for him. So I understand the hesitancy for him to support something like this. Like, here's the thing. He is corrupt, and he can be a hypocrite. He's not stupid, I think.
But as I heard a doctor say, who heard about this, an actual practicing doctor, he said, this is the worst. This is the worst type of socialized medicine there ever could be, because it is literally the government telling you, I'm your doctor now.
Right.
Because the government is now controlling what the doctor says and how the doctor acts and diagnoses. Literally, that is what this is doing. Because the doctor will have to diagnose and treat in a way that the government approves of.
Well, and it throws a big wrench in the whole idea, of what the licensing system is supposed to do there. The licensing system is supposed to make sure that you have a doctor that does not advise a surgery that could kill you and doesn't give you that information, or isn't like nakedly corrupt or fucking their patients or stuff like that. Like, a different opinion on how to medically treat somebody is not criminal. But if that's how they want to... Here's the thing. If they want to weaponize the licensing system, this is why the right is so fucking dumb. If they want to weaponize the licensing system, then the right needs to do the same in every other aspect, whether it comes to education or it comes to, insurance or any other thing that you need to do to get a license. Because there should be... This sounds like a DeSantis thing of like, okay, fine. Then teachers who want to push gender ideology, you can lose your credential. Fine. If you want to play that game... Here's the problem. The left always wins when it comes to something that has to do with that. The three people on the right in history who have ever stood up to a corrupt licensing system have been Chris Christie, who did it a little bit in New Jersey, obviously Trump, and DeSantis. They're the ones saying, no, we can use the power of the government in the capacity that we're given to create favorable outcomes for everyone in this situation and remove bad actors from the situation. Many of your, quote, principled conservatives hate Christie, Trump, and DeSantis for that because their concept of limited government doesn't allow for that for some reason. A limited government is still a functional government. But the idea that you can't, trying to stand in the way and stop something that's happening from an administrative capacity, when you have the downline to be able to do that, whether you're a governor like Christie or DeSantis, or you're a president like Trump, using that power is not anti-conservative.
But the difference here is government intervention and when it's necessary.
Yes.
The left uses government intervention when they want more power and it's not necessary.
Right.
DeSantis, for example, for this, these bills that have been passed in Florida, he used his intervention because he said, this is getting out of hand. We got to do something about it.
It's using it to correct existing government intervention.
Because it's a problem. There's a problem here. The easiest way for me to fix this right now is to do this.
It's so funny.
But there's no problem with right now with doctors giving quote unquote COVID misinformation.
No, they invent a problem and then try to correct it. And the left becomes small government and cons stupid quote small government conservatives when all of a sudden when it comes to something like drag queen story hour or firing a pedophile or something like that, all of a sudden the left becomes super limited government. They know the ages of consent. They're like they're sitting there rifling through a book like you can't do something like that. All of a sudden that's what happens when it comes to something that's one of their pet projects. The best way, in fact, that might be how we get this down. We can get the left in on limited government if we do things that they don't agree with. And the easiest one should be foreign wars. And yet they will jump up and down and give as much money to Ukraine as possible until we are bankrupt. But that's bringing on so many more topics. But I'm glad that you brought that up because I don't think he's going to do it, but, he's done stupid shit before. But at this point, every decision that Newsom makes, he's worried about is going to affect. I think he can still run for re-election or higher office ambitions. So he has that in mind. I think he realizes the rest of the country is not like California. He can't be that stupid. Because he's taking the fight to DeSantis specifically, knowing that they are both of a generation now that is in their 40s and 50s, that is a governor, and they know that governors get elected presidents more than representatives or senators, just by and large, knowing that they represent two separate models for how this country survived the past few years. I mean, I think that DeSantis obviously is a much stronger argument, and I think that their time to run should be not this election, but in 2028 or further, but what do I know?
Well, yeah. The fact that he hasn't signed it yet gives you some hope, but I think he's probably sitting there and wondering what are the optics looking like if I sign or if I don't sign. So he's probably with his team trying to figure out what do I do, because it's been.
Think he's calling Kimberly Guilfoyle for advice?
It's been it's been a week, I think, since it's been passed to his desk to sign.
Oh, so it's already on the desk? Oh yeah, he's not going to sign it.
Yeah,
either that or he's going to get a caveat out of there for some kind of
it has been passed by both houses of California legislature,
yeah, exactly.
And it's sitting on his desk.
Maybe there's going to be some kind of conscientious objection thing or something like that they're going to try to get out because that's the only way I could see something like that going through. You can't just force something like that in. Well, anyway.
Have a great day and fuck yourselves.
Now